During this class, we are going to implement a new complex operation that is relating this time the transactions and the sellers. So basically what we are going to obtain is the specific seller of a transaction. As you may know, there does not exist equally a relationship between transaction and seller, so we have to do that through the product relationship because a product has a seller and a transaction has a product. So we can do it in a very similar way as we did it in the previous class, but this time for seller. So let's go to create this new controller called transactionsellercontroller. Again, with only the index method, and we just need to go to our roots to create a new one. Very similar to this, but instead of categories we have sellers. And the name of the controller is transactionsellercontroller. So you may be asking to yourself why it is sellers instead of seller, because it is only one instance of seller, and we can perfectly use it in this way, but it's a good idea to keep it in plural to be consistent with the other endpoints. You can see that all of them are using the plural name of the resource independently if it is returning only one or several instances. So just to be consistent, we need to use sellers preferably. After this, we just need to go to the index method, obtain the transaction, remember to extend from API controller, and we just need to say that the seller is the seller of the product of that transaction. So we have the transaction, the product of that transaction, and finally the seller of that product. That finally is the seller of that specific transaction. Just return it. And we should be done now. So if we go to Postman and try to obtain the transaction number 5 and its seller, so now if we go to Postman to verify the functionality of this, we want to obtain, for example, the seller of a specific transaction with ID number 5. So with this, we can see the seller of the transaction number 5, and of course, we can change this ID as we need. If we specify a transaction that does not exist, we are going to obtain the regular not found exception. So we are done now with the complex operations related with transaction. See you in the next class.